We'll be bringing you the very latest on that, so do stay with us if you can. And these are the headlines. Is this his last hour of life? It's reported that Saddam Hussein will be executed in Baghdad. Well, readying for a backlash, the American State Department warns all U.S. embassies to be prepared for a violent reaction. One other headline, tension in Mogadishu as troops supporting the Somali government seek to disarm Islamic militias. Welcome to BBC News. I'm Alistair Yates. Well, the official witnesses to Saddam Hussein's impending execution have been gathering in Baghdad's fortified green zone in final preparation for his hanging, which Iraqi officials are now saying is due within this next hour. State television has been broadcasting footage of his atrocities to prepare the public for his demise. Well, the BBC's Oliver Conway is monitoring developments for us. So let's just reiterate then, it does look as though we were expecting the execution by about an hour, but it looks as though it's going to be being pushed on for about an hour.
Yeah, the early indications were that it would be at dawn, Baghdad time, between 5:30 and 6 local time. It's just gone 6 o'clock now in Iraq. There are lots of formalities to be done with an execution. The authorities want to make sure it goes ahead smoothly, no last-minute hiccups. There is a lot of bureaucratic details involved, paperwork. Witnesses all have to be taken to the scene. They were initially told to gather in the green zone, the fortified area in the centre of Baghdad. We're now hearing that the execution may not take place inside the green zone, but outside. Therefore, they would have to be transported to the place of execution. So it's not completely unsurprising that the timing has slipped slightly, if indeed these are the correct timings that we're hearing out of Baghdad.
It's interesting, isn't it, that it sounds as though it's not going to happen within that secure green zone area, that he's going to be taken outside somewhere. So in terms of policing that, I mean, that's a huge task, isn't it?
Not inside the green zone, but possibly inside another US base, of course. The US does have secure facilities outside the green zone where they will be probably even more strongly fortified, such as Camp Cropper, the big base near the international airport where Saddam had been held. So obviously, if he's been held all that time, that is obviously a very secure facility. There's another place, Camp Justice, as it's known by the US forces in northern Baghdad, where other executions have taken place. They will obviously have a place that is very secure. US troops will be in position throughout the execution, we're hearing, although Saddam will formally be handed over to the Iraqi authorities to carry out the execution. They will be there just to make sure there are no last-minute mishaps, such as an escape or an attack from insurgents. So the US forces, the Iraqi authorities will make sure that everything is in place so that the execution goes ahead smoothly, no last-minute hiccups.
All right, Oliver, thanks very much just for the moment. We'll be back to you as soon as you've got any more for us. Well, I've been talking to Dr. Harlan Ullman. He's a senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. He says the execution of Saddam Hussein would have little impact on Iraq's future.
I think we're making too much ado, really, about nothing. Saddam, no doubt, was a villain. Whether he was convicted for the wrong issues or not, the sentence and the fact that he has been brought to justice, I think, is a good thing. Having said that, this is a spectacle. This is not a show of justice. This is a system, in my judgment, that simply did not work. And unfortunately, it redounds very badly on the Iraqi government and the American government. This is not a surprise. I think that Saddam's defense attorney, as he just suggested, knew this was a foregone conclusion. And so why this could not be organized well so that it does not have this sense of theater and indeed incompetence about executing him, to me it is indicative of the bigger problems in Iraq not being able to get that country together. So the media is making a big circus of this. I suspect that there aren't going to be these huge riots in Baghdad or anyplace else because of the security, and I suspect this will be something that will vanish after the new year. But having said that, what disturbs me most, Alistair, is simply that we could not get this right. We couldn't really come up with a good trial, it seems to me. And now that we're trying to deal with the execution, we have not handled that very well, and it just suggests how difficult bringing stability and the larger political issues in Iraq really are.
But this is a big event, after all. This is a national leader,
Why
a
is it a big
president
event?
of a country who's being executed in this next hour. And President Bush is going to make a big deal of it, isn't he?
Well, I hope not. I hope that President Bush says that he downplays it and says this is a new start. We've now finished the Saddam regime and we move on. I mean, this is kind of like the Nuremberg trials after 1945 without the competence. Look, that Saddam should be brought to justice is a good thing, but to have this huge display of media, which is, I understand, is very, very real, and one appreciates that, but it just seems to me that it's taking out of context this whole particular issue. Now, as a result, I think it shows that the Iraqi government is not capable really of dealing very well with this, certainly in a political relations sense. And if that's the case, what about the really larger issues of bringing stability and some sort of political control to Iraq? So I think this really exposes the weaknesses that we're seeing in Iraq, even though I believe that Saddam is due whatever he gets.
But in terms of how President Bush will use this to his own end, in terms of the future for Iraq and his new strategy for Iraq, surely it's important in the timing to have this happen now, isn't it?
Well, sooner rather than better. There's no question about that. It comes at a good time because of the Muslim holiday that starts tomorrow. In the United States, it's a 4-day holiday. We should note that, by contrast, President Gerald Ford, a man of great integrity who pardoned Richard Nixon, who is now getting tremendous reviews in the press, will have a state funeral on Monday or Tuesday. That will eclipse all of this. But the point I think that Mr. Bush will make very simply is, with Saddam's demise, this now puts the last stages of Iraq behind us. We can move forward on a new front, and I think George Bush will use this as a way of advancing his particular strategy. But beyond that, I don't think we should exaggerate the execution of Saddam Hussein. He was a villain. He was a bad man. The trial was not particularly well managed, but I think he's getting his just desserts. We have to move on. And I think a week from now or even sooner, this will probably be long forgotten, or at least I hope it is.
Do you think Iraq is generally, it's a difficult one, that, of course, because as we now know, over these last 3 years, as the world has got very used to hearing news about Iraq and the various sects there, do you think Iraqis will see this as drawing a line under it and allowing Iraq to go forward for the future, though?
No, I don't think so. I think that what we have is a civil war in Iraq right now, Alistair. I think the situation is going to get a lot worse. I believe that this administration is going to increase American troop presence by some large amount, 20, 30, 40,000. They will focus on Baghdad, trying to bring some measure of stability. I think it's going to make the situation worse, and I'm afraid that what we're going to see in Iraq is a situation deteriorating. I don't think that the execution of Saddam Hussein will contribute to that. You could make a strong argument that the ex-Baathists and the insurgents will try and use that to their ends. But I think we're going to...
Dr. Harlan Ullman talking to me. Well, as you can see, with that breaking news coming up on your screen there, we are hearing that Saddam Hussein has been executed by hanging. That's coming, first of all, from the US-backed television station Al Hurra. So just confirmation then from there. And Reuters news agency also reporting that the US-backed TV station Al Hurra has hung. Al Hurra is saying that Saddam Hussein has been executed by hanging. So let's bring Oliver in now, who, Oliver Conway here, might have a bit more on the wires. Oliver.
Yes, what the Al Hurra, which is a US-backed Iraqi television station, is saying that Saddam Hussein was executed by hanging shortly before 6 a.m. local time. That was the time we were initially expecting. And we heard for a number of reports from other agencies that he had been taken to the gallows. So it all builds up to, looks like indeed very much so, that he has been executed.
And do we assume then that he was taken away from the Green Zone to somewhere else?
At the moment,
we don't know.
At the moment, they're not revealing where the execution place was. Again, as we've said, security is paramount in this case. They don't want any mishaps. They don't want anything to go wrong. So that information will come any moment now, I would have thought.
Oliver, let me just, while we talk to you, let me bring in some pictures here, which are from Dearborn in Michigan in the United States. These are Iraqi Americans, in fact, Shias there in Dearborn, who are celebrating Saddam Hussein's execution. They've been honking their car horns, singing and dancing in celebration, apparently, there. Those pictures from Dearborn in Michigan. So, Oliver, confirmation then, more detail coming in. Is there any more news agencies confirming the execution?
Well, the agencies tend to be quoting the same Al Hurra TV agency, but we had heard from several other sources that he was at the gallows. All the witnesses were saying they had been told to be in place at 5:30 for an execution which was due to take place by 6 o'clock. This agency is now saying that the execution did take place shortly before 6 o'clock, so all the facts point towards Saddam Hussein having been executed. Obviously, this information will be going around the television and radios in Iraq, so the Iraqi people will be aware that this has happened. We heard that the execution was going to be filmed. There will be an official announcement, apparently, with some footage of the execution being broadcast so that the Iraqis are able to see for sure that their former president has been executed. It will open a complete new chapter for many Iraqis. Even when he was in US custody, even when he was on trial, for many Iraqis, his presence was felt very strongly because of those years he had in power, and he dominated the country for 24 years or so. So for Iraqis waking up on this holy day, it's one of the most holy days in the Muslim calendar, Eid al-Adha, and on this day they will hear that Saddam Hussein has been executed at around dawn in Baghdad in Iraq.
Oliver, many thanks for the moment. Let's bring in at this point Phyllis Bennis, who's with the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington. Welcome to BBC News. Let me get your reaction, first of all, to the execution.
I think the most important thing to recognize is that this is not Nuremberg. This trial was not one which is going to create a whole new body of international law, that the idea of it never happening again would be the basis of this trial. This was clearly a trial that was based on victor's justice. Whether Saddam Hussein ultimately should have been convicted in a trial is one thing. This was not that kind of a trial. On the other hand, it seems to me that the conditions facing most Iraqis on a day-to-day basis are so dire in terms of the level of violence, the consequences of the U.S. invasion and occupation, that what happens to Saddam Hussein, I think, is really not at the top of the agenda for most Iraqis living in Iraq now. Some will be very happy, no doubt. Others will be angry. But I think that most Iraqis are facing far more dire consequences in their daily life, and the death of Saddam Hussein is not likely to change that.
Do you think, had the trial been carried out in any other way, in a more free and fair way, which you may suggest, that it may have had a different conclusion, though?
Well, I don't think that there's any question that Saddam Hussein should have been held accountable for massive crimes against humanity that his government was responsible for. What would have been different, I think, is, number one, there would not have inevitably been a death penalty. If we're really serious about talking about a new Iraq, which I don't think this heralds, despite the fact that I think it's right that President Bush will claim that, a new Iraq would do away with the death penalty, and many in Iraq had called for that. The other thing that I think is so crucial is what was left out of these trials. The whole question of U.S. involvement, U.S. complicity, as well as that of European countries, other countries as well, the U.K., Germany, France, Russia, all of whom were supporting Saddam Hussein's regime for many, many years, up until 1990. All of the crimes that Saddam Hussein was on trial for, the murders at Dujail, the campaign, the Anfal campaign against the Kurds, all of that took place when he was a great ally of the United States, of Britain, of France, and the European countries. He received the materials for making biological weapons from the United States. The chemical weapons came from Germany. The biological stock to make the germ warfare came from Britain. So all of those countries are complicit. None of that evidence came out in this trial because of the narrowness of the way the trial was conducted.
Phyllis
That would have been a
Bennis.
very different scenario.
Sorry, Phyllis Bennis from the Institute for Policy Studies in Washington. Thanks for joining us. And on the line now is Bayer Rahman. He's an official representative of the Kurdistan regional government in London and attached to the Iraqi embassy in the UK. You will have heard by now that we are getting information that Saddam Hussein has been executed. Can I get your reactions to that, first of all?
Yes, I think speaking as a Kurdish citizen of Iraq, I hope that Saddam's execution will have closed a very dark chapter in our history, in the history of our nation. Saddam has a lot of blood on his hands. I know many Kurdish citizens, Iraqi citizens, whose very close relatives, fathers, mothers, brothers, sons, daughters, were killed, executed, tortured, disappeared in mass graves, all at the hands of Saddam Hussein. So for me, and I think for many other Iraqi citizens, today will hopefully close a chapter on a very dark page, or chapter rather, of our history.
Do you think that is a large hope, though? Do you not feel that Saddam Hussein's Ba'ath Party may become stronger, may regroup, gather more membership because of the execution?
Some people have said that he shouldn't have been executed, that this might make him a martyr. Of course, there is always that danger or that possibility. The remnants of the Ba'ath Party will use whatever excuse is available to them. But the fact is that in some ways Saddam Hussein has been irrelevant to the future of Iraq since he was captured 2 years ago, captured in a rat hole, which I would say a lot of Iraqis also found very appropriate. He has been irrelevant to Iraq's future over the past 2 years when we've had elections in Iraq with millions of people voting by choice, not in the kind of elections that were held under Saddam Hussein, where 99.9% of the population was forced to say yes to referendums where Saddam was elected. So Saddam has become increasingly irrelevant to our future. And if he has indeed been executed, which seems to be the case now, then it's just finalizing that. It's just closing on the door on any possibility that he might come back. Some remnants of the Ba'ath Party might rally around him, but the fact is that he killed people. He killed people by chemical attacks. He killed 5,000 people in Halabja in one day, in one moment, through chemical attacks. He was responsible for the disappearance of 8,000 members of the Barzani tribe, 8,000 boys and men, people from the age of 12 upwards. Just imagine that. Imagine that happening in the 20th century in this world. He was responsible for that. So his execution is timely and I would say welcomed by many Iraqis.
Bayer Rahman, many thanks indeed for your thoughts on this. The BBC's Oliver Conway here with me once again with more detail coming in of Saddam Hussein's execution.
Yes, well, initially this was reported on the US-backed Al-Harar TV station, US-backed, so they would get good information from the US authorities. It's also being reported on Al Arabiya television station, Arabic station in the region. So all the indications are that Saddam Hussein has indeed been hanged for crimes against humanity. Now, other reports say that there were two other people who were due to be executed at the same time. These are Saddam's half-brother Barzan Ibrahim and Awad Hawad al-Bandar, who's the former Chief Justice of the Revolutionary Court. They were sentenced at the same time, Saddam, November the 5th, to death for their involvement in the massacre to do jail. Now, we're hearing that they were both at the gallows at the same time as Saddam. We don't know whether they too have been executed, but it seems likely that they will be if they haven't as yet.
All right, Oliver. Let's go live to Washington at this point. The latest from our correspondent, Adam Brooks, who is there. How will this news, do you think, Adam, be taken in America?
Well, the Bush administration will certainly welcome it. It'll be portrayed by the Bush administration as turning a page in Iraq, as a demonstration of the fact that Iraq has a justice system, that it's able to hold Saddam Hussein accountable. And as further proof, as the Americans would like the rest of the region to see, that Iraq is now an independent, sovereign, a democratic government. That's the way that the administration will want this to be seen. More widely across America, well, this isn't the only milestone that is passing in these few days. We're about to hit 3,000 US troops dead in Iraq. We've just passed 25,000 total US casualties in Iraq. Will Americans look upon the hanging of Saddam Hussein as setting Iraq on the path to stability? No, they won't. There are other things on their minds. I think it'll be broadly welcomed here, but I don't think America will be seeing this as the solution to Iraq's problems.
Adam, will those who have loved ones in the US forces out there, will they be very concerned that there is this fear of reprisals and the US embassies, of course, around the world being warned to be on alert?
The United States military and intelligence and the Bush administration are certainly concerned that there could be a spike in violence after this. If some parts of the Sunni community in Iraq, particularly those people who are closely affiliated with Saddam and his regime, the former regime elements as they're known, or the former Baathists in the insurgency, if they choose to make this a cause célèbre and to not only launch attacks against US troops, but perhaps try to stir the sectarian violence in Iraq, which is now the most significant factor in Iraq's violence, perhaps by hitting prominent Shiite targets, perhaps by carrying out aggressive attacks against Shiites. It could be very serious indeed. America is aware of this. And we know that US troops in Iraq are on high alert for that. We know, too, that embassies around the world outside Iraq have been told to review their security and be aware of the possibility of reprisal attacks or demonstrations.
The BBC's Adam Brooks there reporting live for us from Washington. Many thanks indeed, Adam. And now, I believe that at any moment we're expecting the Iraqi Deputy Foreign Minister, Labid Abawi, and I believe that he is on the line to us now. Many thanks indeed for joining us. You will confirm for us that Saddam Hussein has been executed?
Yes, I believe so, yes. He has been executed. It has been officially announced that he has been executed.
And what about those others who were to be executed at the same time? Can you confirm that for us?
Well, I am not sure yet, but I believe that the other two will be executed with him as well, Bazdan and Al-Bandar. But you know, all the news is focused on Saddam, but I think the other two also they should be executed with him.
At the same time. In terms of your Eid, the Muslim Eid festival about to begin there, the timing of this we've been talking about, were the Iraqi authorities, you yourself, were you concerned about the timing, that this should take place at this point?
Well, I think the timing is quite well calculated. You know, as for the court order is that within 30 days he should be executed. This is an order. This is a court order. So I think it's only a matter of choosing within that 30 days the timing. So I don't think that what we call that choosing this time was good or bad. I think it is appropriate because the longer he stays, the more trouble we will face. And I think once he's executed and is done with, then we can, this era of tyranny and darkness, we can put it behind us and we start something new.
But who would have taken... I'm sorry.
It's appropriate for the Iraqi people and for all those who have suffered from Saddam Hussein.
Who would have taken the decision, though, to execute him now, before the Eid Muslim festival? Because, after all, there will be Muslims who will have felt that that was a strange decision, surely.
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's on the eve of the festivities or just after the festivity. Maybe it was considered this is a very good festivity gift to the Iraqi people that justice has been done at last, and I think people will be jubilant on this. And I think maybe a lot of people, especially those people who have lost their loved ones in the hands of Saddam Hussein in the last 3.5 decades, will be celebrating. And as part of the Eid celebration as well, they will celebrate the end of Saddam Hussein. So I think for the majority of the Iraqi people, the overwhelming majority of the Iraqi people, this is an event to celebrate.
And as Deputy Foreign Minister, do you worry about how the rest of the Arab world, for instance, not to mention some in the West world, will react to this sentence and this hanging?
Well, of course, we will expect some sort of reaction, but we are not worried about it because we don't really understand what this was about. I mean, everybody knows who Saddam Hussein, what he has committed, and we don't understand why all this fuss about his execution. I mean, I don't understand. Do we have to now to go back and reverse the decision or reverse what the Europe have done to Mussolini and to Hitler and to the war criminals? Do they have to say that we were wrong? I mean, this man who everybody knows who has committed so many heinous crimes against humanity, against the Iraqi people, against the neighboring country, against the whole world. Now the whole terrorism now what we're suffering, it started from his actions and partly from his actions. So everybody knows this style. And I mean, what's the fuss now about him? And they start everybody saying that, oh, if he's executed, there will be repercussions, there will be this and that. I think as if they are inciting, telling people go and do this kind of things. I mean, they should understand the feeling of the Iraqi people, the millions of the Iraqi people. Okay, there is a decision by the European Union against the capital crime. Okay, I mean, we understand this. They have been mentioned to us, and we have already in numerous letters we have explained our position, why we think that the execution should be committed. Especially they know Iraqi now are suffering from crimes and from terrorism, and the only way to do that is that we have to show some kind of force.
The Iraqi deputy.
Regarding Saddam Hussein, it is a matter of understanding and respecting the feeling of Iraqi people, respecting the people who suffered from Saddam, the martyrs who have been killed by Saddam Hussein. I mean, all this has to be turned away just because somebody in Europe or somebody in the West, they think this is a wrong position. I think, I'm sorry to say this, but I think it's not helping us at all.
The Iraqi Deputy Foreign Minister, Labid Abawi, joining us there. Many thanks indeed for coming on the line to BBC News. We're going live to Washington now for the latest from Adam Brooks, and just to say that Iraqi state television is actually now confirming that Saddam Hussein has been executed. What is the latest from your side of the Atlantic there, Adam?
Alistair, we're awaiting some sort of comment from the Bush administration, from either the National Security Council or from a spokesman for the president. We do not anticipate that President Bush will be coming out and making any sort of statement. The Americans want to play this very low key. We were told by White House sources earlier today that they would be trying to keep this very low profile. They want American involvement in this entire process to be as low profile as possible. So we are expecting some sort of statement. We imagine it'll be coming out any time now. But the Americans are very keen to have the execution of Saddam Hussein be seen as an Iraqi affair. America does not want the region to see, to believe that Saddam was executed by America. They want the region to believe that Saddam was executed by a sovereign and independent Iraqi government.
Of course, there are Iraqis in the United States. In fact, we have some pictures here coming in from Dearborn in Michigan of Iraqi Americans. These are Shias who are out on the streets there celebrating. They've been honking their horns, apparently, singing and dancing in celebration of Saddam's execution. How will this play, do you think, in terms of President Bush's strategy for the future of Iraq, which he's due to announce, of course, isn't he, Adam?
Well, I mean, you know, the hanging of Saddam, and it appears that, you know, numerous Arab media are now reporting that this has taken place. I think we can assume that the hanging has indeed taken place. The hanging of Saddam is not something that the Americans see as a vital strategic development in the day-to-day situation in Iraq. The violence in Iraq has moved well beyond Saddam Hussein. It's moved well beyond the loyalists to Saddam who are active in the Sunni insurgency. The key defining factor of the violence that is so racking Iraq today is sectarianism. It's Shiite on Sunni, Sunni on Shiite violence. that is causing so much of the instability throughout the country. So the death of Saddam probably will not affect facts on the ground in a strategic way. That's the read here in Washington. It won't necessarily set Iraq on a path to stability. The Americans are anticipating a spike in violence. The US military is on alert. US embassies around the world have been told to be